Hello, hello. My name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Monday, the 7th of July, 2025. 640 days of chaos, 640 days of killing, 640 days of hostages being held, of atrocities in Gaza, of rocket fire, of war between Iran and Israel, Palestinians in Gaza suffering the most, the vast majority of them civilians. An update today in terms of the news over the last 24 hours. Mondays are normally, quite intense in terms of news and updates. Today is no exception. I'll try to keep it brief, though. Those indirect talks between Israel and Hamas have started in Qatar, and they ended inconclusively. The Israeli delegation did not have a sufficient mandate to reach an agreement with Hamas, two Palestinian sources said. This was ahead of Netanyahu's meeting with President Trump, which I'll talk about in a minute. It was said that Israeli negotiators have instructions to achieve a ceasefire deal under the conditions that Israel accepted, but a Palestinian official said the talks are expected to resume today. So, there often are parallel talks to the major diplomatic talks. And so it could be that something happens in the dinner meeting that's happening tonight between Netanyahu and President Trump. The ceasefire proposal under discussion would take 60 days of a truce. This would be a temporary ceasefire. It would involve the handing over of 10 living and 18 dead hostages. Israeli forces would withdraw to a buffer zone along Gaza's borders between Israel and Egypt. The UN and Palestinian Red Crescent would distribute significant amounts of aid. This was according to the AP News, who said they saw copies of the document. This is different than some of the updates I gave of some of the specifics. This is 28 hostages total, but there are nuances in this most recent report. Hamas has lost about 80% of its control over Gaza, with armed clans filling the void, according to a senior Hamas security force official. Most of the leadership, 95%, are dead, and there's no control anywhere, the official said. Part of what they're making reference to is that there is a takeover of armed clans in Gaza. There's been a complete void. Hamas ran the police forces, and so you have desperate people who are hungry and without water and without any, security forces, be they Hamas or clans, etc. And so now the clans seem to have the majority of control. Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 38 people in Gaza, according to reports yesterday. The IDF said that its strike on the popular Al-Baqa cafe in Gaza City Monday last week killed the commander of Hamas's naval force. I mean, this was a cafe, one of the few that is still open in Gaza, where people were sitting to have coffee, and it, was devastating. So often the justification is, but a Hamas commander was killed. The IDF said it took steps to mitigate the risk of harming civilians. Local medics say 40 people were killed in that attack on the cafe. The U.S. and Israel-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation on Saturday blamed Hamas for injuring two of its workers at the Han Yunis Aid Center. The media office in Gaza yesterday rejected accusations that the group was involved in the attack. And the UN recorded 613 killings of Palestinians who have been seeking aid at the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation distribution points and near humanitarian convoys as of June 27th. With further incidents since, the UN officer of the High Commissioner for Human Rights spokesperson said on Friday, of the 613 Palestinian killed, 509 were killed near GHF sites. Now, Iran has said they don't plan to further retaliate against the United States for the U.S. attacks on their nuclear sites, but they do have have no plans of stopping uranium enrichment. They do plan on continuing to develop their uranium enrichment. Tehran's deputy foreign minister, Ravanchi, told NBC News in a Thursday interview. Separately, a source said that the U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, plans to meet Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi in Oslo next week to restart nuclear talks between the U.S. and Iran. The final date of any talks is yet to be set, and neither country has publicly confirmed the meeting. The International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors have left and departed Iran, according to the new UN nuclear watchdog on Friday, days after Tehran enacted a law suspending cooperation with that international agency. Trump discussed the situation with Iran and other regional issues with the Saudi defense minister, Prince Khalid bin Salman, during a Thursday meeting at the White House. Following his meeting with Trump, bin Salman said he spoke on the phone with the chief of Iran's general staff of the armed forces, General Mousavi. European officials say that they believe Israeli and U.S. attacks on Iran have created new incentives for Tehran to pursue nuclear weapons in secret, with the strikes hardening the mood in Iran. Which would mean that the effect has been the opposite of what was intended. In terms of the Houthis, the Israeli military earlier today launched airstrikes targeting ports and facilities held by Houthi rebels in Yemen. This was the first time Israel's attacked the Houthis in nearly a month. The Houthis responded by firing missiles at Israel in retaliation. The exchange of fire came hours after the rescue of a crew. That carrier that I was talking about was a Greek-operated bulk carrier. The vessel was hit by gunfire, drones, and missiles in the Red Sea in an attack maritime security firms said bore hallmarks of the Houthis. Hezbollah, in terms of Lebanon, will not lay down its weapons until Israel withdraws from South Lebanon and stops its airstrike, the group's leader, Naim Qassem, said in a video address yesterday. You'll recall that Israel's in at least 4 of the points that it was supposed to be removed from south of the Litani River in South Lebanon as a part of the initial ceasefire deal. The ceasefire is holding even though Israel has not been removed from those locations in South Lebanon. Russia on Thursday became the first country to formally recognize the Taliban government in Afghanistan. We normally don't talk about Afghanistan, but I wanted to just make note of that. Turkish police on Saturday detained 3 more opposition-affiliated city mayors in what the government said was an investigation into alleged corruption. Opposition leaders disputed the charges, accusing President Erdogan's government of imposing an authoritarian rule without a ballot box. I just finished an academic article that'll be coming out in the fall on international religious freedom, and I did some extensive research on Turkey, which became a presidential republic, an Islamic state under Erdogan. When Erdogan first came to power, he positioned himself as a moderate Muslim. And once that article comes out, I should pull out some of those notes and share them with you. A moderate Muslim who, was committed even to the possibility of acknowledging the Armenian genocide, for example, was one of the things that was discussed. And what's happened is there's been an increased authoritarianism and Islamization of the state. So minorities like Christians and others fear that they are at risk. And this news report is evidence just of some of those actions under Erdogan's leadership. Trump and Israel's Netanyahu are supposed to meet tonight. They're supposed to have a dinner meeting at the White House. I've not seen any reports as of 7 p.m. tonight, DC time, about what is happening in that meeting, if they're meeting right now. CNN reported about what the meeting would entail, saying it marks the 3rd visit of Netanyahu to the White House since January. I do know that there were protests planned by some of the leaders engaged in standing up against Israel's policies, particularly via Gaza. Unlike the previous 2 episodes, there were no public events on the schedule this time around, which means that this meeting will be entirely in private. So this difference underscores Trump's parallel approaches to his Israeli counterpart, even as he pulls Netanyahu close. This is CNN's analysis saying, joining Israel's war on Iran, calling for Netanyahu's corruption trial to be canceled. I did not know that Trump did that, but he's been applying pressure on Netanyahu to do something for him. And the goal is ending the war in Gaza. For Trump, a deal ending the 21-month conflict would be another data point in his efforts to win the Nobel Prize. We know that that's one of his goals. His long-running and highly difficult quest to cement peace in the Middle East as a part of his presidential legacy. He clearly sees Netanyahu as a critical ally in that role, or in that goal, though the president occasionally lashed out at the Israeli leader when he appeared to become an obstacle instead. Now Trump needs both Hamas and Netanyahu to agree to the terms each had previously rejected, namely language about whether or not the ceasefire will end the war altogether. Michael Oren was a former Israeli ambassador to the United States, and he said this about the meeting. He said, the prime minister is coming to the meeting now, much strengthened Israel by much strengthened by Israel's military victory over Iran. The president is coming into this meeting much strengthened by America's victory over Iran. Both leaders can show a certain amount of flexibility. Clearly, the president wants this deal. If an agreement is struck, Trump appears poised to take the credit with help from Netanyahu. The prime minister said as he was departing Israel to come to Washington that his meeting with Trump can certainly help advance these results. And it was clear that Trump was hoping the meeting would result in progress. So my prayer is, might President Trump pressure Netanyahu so that there will be a ceasefire in Gaza. May a permanent, comprehensive ceasefire related to Gaza and the entire Middle East, but related to Gaza, be wrought in the meeting that's happening right now between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. May God go before us in our personal efforts and our corporate efforts for Churches for Middle East Peace. Pray for our staff team. There's a lot on our plates, not just in terms of work, but there's tough decisions. There's challenges coming our way personally, professionally, for every staff person. I pray for you. Of course, the issue we're trying to constructively engage in, ending U.S. complicity in the genocide of Gaza. It's not for the faint of heart, and yet it is the most righteous work we can engage in. And so thank you for not giving up. We hold on to hope. May God give us strength, and may he go before us. In the name of Christ, amen.